They marched in their millions for Palestine last weekend in the largest day of global protest yet. From London to Sydney, from Dublin to Dhaka, from Caracas to Jakarta, protesters poured onto the streets. In an exclusive roundup of the intercontinental protests, we bring you these reports from over 20 huge marches for Palestine. Nearly 1/3 people marched in London last Saturday in one of the biggest of the international series of demonstrations over the weekend. Organisers from the Palestine Solidarity Campaign, the Stop the War Coalition, the Palestine Forum of Britain, the Muslim Association of Britain and the Friends of Al-Aqsa claimed that 300,000 people were on the march, which took place just ahead of the year anniversary of the Hamas breakout from Gaza on October the 7th and the subsequent Israeli attack on Gaza. Journalist Sophia Thompson was among the marchers. She had this to say.
The government does not represent the people. I mean, like, as you can see here today, this is the true essence of what the sentiments of the UK are. Like, this is how everyone feels. So the government does not represent us. This is the majority of what the people in the UK feel. So,
in Rome, police tried to prevent protesters from marching through the streets of the Italian capital. Clashes broke out between pro-Palestinian protesters and the police, who attacked the marchers with tear gas and water cannon. Eventually, a compromise was reached, allowing the demonstration to take place, but only in the square where it was originally set to begin. In the Irish capital, Dublin, several thousand took to the streets waving Palestinian flags and chanting pro-Palestinian slogans. Rally organiser Zoe Lawler told reporters,
"Well, we're here to show our unbreakable solidarity with the Palestinian people here today, to come out in huge numbers, and we're here to demand action from the Irish government to sanction Israel for its crimes against humanity and against the Palestinian people. It's been 1 year of genocide and 1 year of impunity, and that has enabled Israel to continue committing crimes. So we want action from the Irish government to stop blocking the legislation, enact the Occupied Territories Bill, the Illegal Israeli Settlements Divestment Bill, the Arms Embargo Bill, and to sanction Israel and cut all diplomatic ties."
Thousands of people marched through the streets of Paris against the ongoing Israeli military offensive in Gaza and in the Lebanon. The rally was addressed by left-wing leader Jean-Luc Mélenchon. A massed pro-Palestinian demo also hit the streets of the Greek capital, Athens. In New York, the streets were filled with Palestinian solidarity marchers. Academic and political activist Cornel West was on the New York march. He had this to say.
Well, my brother, I'm here to forever be in solidarity with people undergoing a vicious genocide. Dealing with ethnic cleansing is getting worse. It's been a whole year now, you know? And we got to keep fighting. We got to keep fighting them, man. Absolutely. No doubt, no doubt, no doubt.
Also in the US, pro-Palestinian protesters gathered in front of the White House in Washington, D.C. to demand an end to the conflict in Gaza and Lebanon as the war with the Palestinian territory nears the 1-year mark. Cayla Nimmo, who lives in Washington, D.C., made this comparison between the way the politicians treat the war in Ukraine and the war in Gaza.
I've been really disappointed in hearing the change in rhetoric and the change in tone in these strong terms of condemnation against Russia and Ukraine versus the lack of strength in condemning Israel for its war crimes in Palestine. And I think that's been consistent with Biden, with Kamala, and with Republican candidates as well.
In the Turkish capital, Istanbul, large crowds took to the streets. The Turkish Education Union president said,
Aksa tufanı son bir feryat, canhıraş bir çıkış, bu kandırmacanın, bu satışın reddedilmesi anlamına geliyor. Ve son 15 yılda unutulan, terk edilen Filistin davası meselesi, bırakalım İslam dünyasının tekrar gündemine girmeyi, Amerikan üniversitelerinden işte İngiltere sokaklarına kadar her tarafta tekrardan gündem oldu.
In Argentina, people gathered in Buenos Aires to hold a candlelight pro-Palestinian vigil. Mariam Raymond, vigil attendee, said,
Pedimos que se hagan responsables y que se dé un alto al fuego inmediato.
Thousands marched through Germany's capital in Berlin in solidarity with the Palestinians. The march took place in the European capital in which repression of the Palestinian movement has been most severe. Demonstrator Paul Grass said,
Ich ertrage das Massenmorden einfach nicht mehr. So. Und ich denke, wir müssen uns dagegen organisieren. So, und auch Solidarität zeigen. Deswegen bin ich hier.
Tens of thousands waved Palestinian flags as they marched in Pakistan's Karachi to show solidarity with the Palestinians amid the ongoing conflict. One protester had this to say.
ये प्रोटेस्ट है पूरी दुनिया के ज़मीर को जगाने के लिए, ये प्रोटेस्ट है मुस्लिम हुक्मरानों को जगाने के लिए, ये प्रोटेस्ट है अमेरिका को बताने के लिए कि तुम दहशतगर्दी का साथ दे रहे हो, अक़वाम मुत्तहिदा को बताने के लिए कि अक़वाम मुत्तहिदा मज़लूमों के साथ नहीं खड़ी हुई, अपना रोल अदा नहीं कर रही। इसलिए आज कराची के लोगों ने इतनी बड़ी तादाद में, मिलियंस की तादाद में यहाँ जमा होकर इस बात का ऐलान किया है कि हम फ़लस्तीनियों के साथ हैं।
In Dhaka, Bangladesh, thousands of pro-Palestinian protesters staged a rally near the National Mosque after Friday prayers in solidarity with Palestinian and Lebanese people. Protesters chanted slogans and marched with banners, while some waved Palestinian flags. Thousands of Moroccans took place in a pro-Palestinian march in Rabat City, calling for a ceasefire in Gaza. In Sydney, Australia, protesters were also out in force in one of the largest of the country's recent Palestinian solidarity marches. Disability worker Rachel Evins had this to say.
Our movement is very strong. The Colombian government stopped sending their coal to Israel a few months ago. There is word that Israel is bankrupt, and the army in the IDF, army members in the Israel Defence Force are leaving, and we are very hopeful, but we're organising because we don't want to see a World War III, and we know that we can pressure our governments to take a clear stand against Israel, and we have seen some movement of the Min's state government and the Albanese government, so we're going to protest until we win this boycott, divest and sanctions battle.
Thousands took part in a rally in front of the US Embassy in Jakarta, the Indonesian capital, calling for a ceasefire in Gaza as the war in the Palestinian territory nears its one-year mark. Pro-Palestinian supporters gathered on the streets of Toronto, Canada, in one of the city's larger Palestinian protests. In Mexico City, protesters were also out in force. This is what Ana Rosa Moreno from the Boycott, Disinvestment and Sanctions Movement of Mexico had to say.
Porque ya se está cumpliendo un año del 7 de octubre. Queremos recordar que esto no empezó el 7 de octubre, ha existido violencia y colonización en el territorio palestino desde hace 76 años, y esto solamente es parte de este proceso de limpieza étnica que el Estado sionista, colonial y racista ha llevado contra el pueblo palestino.
A huge Palestinian march in the Spanish capital brought Madrid's streets to a halt. A Spanish protester also made links between Gaza and the Ukraine.
Hemos visto que no está atacando a Hamas, hemos visto que ha ido atacando a más de 40.000 civiles, de entre ellos niños, que ahora la cifra ha subido más. Y la verdad es que nos gustaría que ya pare ya la guerra, tanto en Ucrania como en Palestina, en Líbano, en todo el mundo.
Hundreds of Palestinian supporters, including members of the Arab community in Venezuela, protested in front of the UN headquarters in Caracas in support of Gaza and Lebanon. In Chile, there were more protests led by the Palestinian community. Chile has the largest Palestinian diaspora outside the Middle East. In Cape Town, South Africa, they were on the streets. And some were clearly very critical of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu.
Because Netanyahu and his cabinet, they are not running out of thirst to kill the people of Palestine for just fighting for their land. So we are saying to the entire world, we see what progressive forces are saying. Here as South Africa, we support the cause of the Palestinians.
But perhaps the largest manifestation for Palestine was in Yemen. Protesters gathered in the Al Sabin Square in support of Gaza and Lebanon in the wake of the United States and Britain's bombing of the capital Sana'a and the port city of Hadida.